You have got to be fucking kidding me. It's telling this video from our friends at Prager U, full title, Will Witt, Martin Luther King Jr. versus Black Lives Matter, is like 2 minutes long. This is nuts. Every Twitch or YouTube streamer or whoever has fans who like to watch them react to stuff should make a reaction video to this. What I really want is to see a black person's reaction because this is, as I sometimes say, some shit. Let's do a little teeny tiny pinch of Hoss debunks for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Dude had a fitting surname, MLK. RIP to a real one. Now, I'm no authority on Martin Luther King Jr., but one of the things I loved talking about as an English teacher was the Aristotelian rhetorical triangle. I don't know if that's its official name, but I enjoy saying it. Ethos, pathos, logos. Let's see, how succinctly can I sum this up? Essentially, the Aristotelian rhetorical triangle says that to be persuasive, an argument should have trustworthiness, emotional appeal, and satisfying logic. There's a whole treasure trove of Funyuns there that we'll surely draw from in future videos, but the point is that Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech is a near-perfect text for illustrating the power of these three general rhetorical elements or tactics. Who told this goofy motherfucker to turn his hat around for this video? I'm leaving that alone. Okay, quick take. Let's go to the clip.
What's up, guys? This is Will Witt with Prager U, and the teachings of MLK don't really align with Black Lives Matter. For MLK Day this year, a lot of people are looking at his old quotes and speeches and using them as a guide for what we should do with racial injustice in this country right now. One of those groups is Black Lives Matter. But Black Lives Matter doesn't align with anything that Martin Luther King Jr. said back in the day. Here's why. First of all, Black Lives Matter takes MLK quotes out of context. They always like to show the quote, "A riot is a language of the unheard." But reality, they leave out the lines that Martin Luther King said right before that, where he called riots self-defeating and socially destructive.
So what? This is classic non-argument bullshit here. It's a straw man. Nobody is making the argument that riots are good and productive, dum-dum. The point of citing this quote is that rioting and looting are last resort type symptoms of a sick society. When the power structures oppress people to the point of having nothing to lose, that's a bad thing for everyone. It's not a justification for violence or rioting or property damage. Instead of demonizing the rioters, let's look at the situation like reasonable adults and try to fix the underlying problems that got us to this point. This reminds me of "They hate us for our freedom," a line George W. Bush and other neocons used to use to justify the war on terror. It's a simple, digestible line that just happens to frame the situation in a way that ostensibly paints the US as the good guys and the vague notion of radical Islamic terrorism as the bad guys. In the months and years following 9/11, and probably to this day in many circles, simply acknowledging the fact that Osama bin Laden explicitly gave tangible, material reasons for orchestrating the 9/11 attacks, in short, that US foreign policy was causing the deaths and suffering of innocent people in the Middle East and around the world, would get patriot types accusing you of sympathizing with the terrorists. No, man, I'm not sympathizing with anyone. I'm just saying we should try to understand the material reality of the situation from as many perspectives as possible if we want to actually come up with effective solutions to the problem. Let's take a recent example from the other side of the aisle. Do you think "fuck them, they're evil" would be a good reaction to the storming of the Capitol that happened on January 6th? My personal opinion is that, while it does appear that some non-negligible portion of those folks were straight up white nationalists and white supremacists, these people are mostly just acting on terrible information. I know that feels a little condescending, and I'm not saying it justifies any of it or anything, just that saying "what a bunch of evil, stupid idiots" isn't gonna get us anywhere. Yes, people need to be held accountable, but it's not weak or negotiating with terrorists to try and look at the situation objectively and determine whether we can change any of our behavior to foster better outcomes. Who cares about who's good and who's bad? Reality and humanity is just not like that. As George Carlin said, there are no innocent bystanders.
Sick American shit. I'm also tired of hearing about innocent victims. This is an outmoded idea. There are no innocent victims. If you live on this planet, you're guilty, period. Fuck you, end of report. Next case. Next fucking case. Next case.
Now, a dingus or a ghoul might use this clip to justify collateral damage or drone strikes on weddings in Pakistan, but that wasn't Carlin's thing. It's more of a "we're all in this together, judge lest ye not be judged" type notion. If you go into this very stupid Prager U video with a bias against Black Lives Matter, this awful point about riots might seem to make sense, but as I've just demonstrated, it completely falls apart upon any examination. Here's Ilhan Omar telling people in her district that riots, property damage, and violence are counterproductive. I mean, she's not a BLM representative, but this is the overwhelming attitude on the actual left.
And it's really heartbreaking to watch what took place last night and what continues to happen. To watch our city burn really is one of the most devastating things that has happened to us. It's also devastating to know the anger and the frustration that people feel, and have it be really evolve into a situation that is dangerous for everyone. To me, it's important for people to realize that violence begets violence, and more force brings about loss of life and more devastation. And so we have to find a balance here. We have to be able to peacefully protest, but work to protect one another and make sure that our communities are going to be intact and prioritize the lives of people that are going to be impacted. And so it's going to be an ongoing process, and centering the community and having them come up with a de-escalation process really is going to be important, and that's what I look forward to helping facilitate.
This video also just demonstrates what BLM leaders and others on the left have been saying. Rioting is bad in and of itself, but it also gives bad faith actors ammunition for misrepresenting what the actual demands and situation are. But it did get people's attention, and hopefully we can educate people about reality as long as we have that attention, but nobody's saying that justifies violence or property damage or anything like that. Here's Will Witt's next smart brain point.
Secondly, Black Lives Matter wants to disband the Western nuclear family. They had that up on their website before they deleted it, but MLK totally believed in family values. He said the group of the father, mother, and child is the main educational agency of mankind. MLK didn't want to disband the nuclear family, he wanted to strengthen it.
Oh my god, this is just another stupid straw man. Who gives a shit? Okay, real quick, the phrase he's referring to from BLM's website is "we disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure," which does not mean we hate families and want to destroy them, of course, but, you know, this guy's a liar. There's a PolitiFact article on this linked in the description, but whether you trust that source or not, how can you not see that this is a bad faith interpretation and representation of this idea? It just means that we should be looking at ourselves as a larger interconnected community. People with a wide, diverse range of valid approaches to living a decent life as members of civilization, and not just basing everything on the very ethnocentric Western conception of what a family looks like. What the fuck would it even mean to destroy the nuclear family? I mean, what would that look like? Who would want to do that? To what end? That's supposed to be your reaction. And it should be, because it's silly, but that's because Will Witt and Prager U fucking made it up. Okay, the third and, believe it or not, final point in this ridiculous video.
Thirdly, Black Lives Matter loves affirmative action and diversity standards, whereas MLK believed that you should judge someone based off their character, not their skin color. When you push affirmative action, giving people advantages or disadvantages just because of the color of their skin, you are not following what MLK believed in. So this MLK Day, remember that Martin Luther King Jr. believed in character over color, where Black Lives Matter believes exactly the opposite.
Another fucking straw man. God, this video sucks. Will Witt's heart really doesn't seem to be in it either. But essentially this third point is just a tautology. Essentially what he's saying is MLK would disapprove of affirmative action because affirmative action is not good. Okay, that's not what affirmative action is. This is a complex topic that requires nuance and context and definition of terms, and fuck, I can't do this anymore. He doesn't say anything else. That's it. 90 seconds in, that's all the content with any substance to it. Okay, back to that rhetorical triangle that MLK and other great orators are so great at using, whether they do so consciously or not. It's important to keep in mind that effective use of ethos, pathos, and logos does not make one's argument logically sound or correct necessarily. It just means it has persuasive potential as a piece of rhetoric or propaganda. Will Witt and Prager U's little video does make limited use of these rhetorical strategies. It evokes ethos, as in authoritativeness or trustworthiness, because it's supposedly using Martin Luther King Jr. as its main source. A good example of ethos would be like taking medical advice from a medical doctor. Martin Luther King Jr. is generally regarded as a righteous and intelligent figure in the United States, especially on issues of race relations and racial justice. Of course, Prager U is just lying and pretending to be able to read MLK's mind from beyond the grave to fit their dishonest agenda, but they're hoping you won't notice that part. The ethos of their video overlaps a bit with its pathos, or emotional appeal, as they're trying to trick their audience into believing that MLK would agree with the racist, reactionary politics of modern American conservatives. And it feels noble to supposedly supposedly agree with MLK, right? Finally, logos, or appeal to the audience's sense of logic, is probably the rhetorical technique this video relies on most heavily, interestingly enough. It's also the one I think is most interesting to analyze. Like the other two angles of the Aristotelian rhetorical triangle, which I'm calling that because Aristotle came up with it, by the way, not sure if I mentioned that part, logos can take on many effective forms. It's often defined on a basic level by using facts and figures as evidence, but it can also just appeal to one's sense of logic without actually being factual or logical upon further examination. Like when Obama said in his 2004 DNC speech, which introduced him to most of the American population,
"This is not the red and blue states of America, it's the United States of America. It's not the conservative and liberal states of America, it's the United States of America."
and so on and so forth. Now, that's not actually why the USA has the word united in its name, which just about everyone understands on some level. There's not actually any substance to this now famous piece of Obama's rhetoric, but it feels logical and correct if you don't think much about it. This doesn't mean Obama was lying with this rhetorical flourish, just that he was employing logos to make this sentimental notion feel logical. Similarly, all three of Will Witt's claims in this video feel like they support the video's main premise, that MLK would have disapproved of BLM, but the premise of each individual point is built on a foundation of bullshit. What a fucking joke. Jesus, I'm glad the first awful title I decided to click on led me to a 2-minute video. I don't think my heart could handle much more of this. I do have a history of cardiovascular problems in my family, so maybe I should take Fancy for a walk and cool off before I record the outro to this. Well, this was fun. A little quick take. I've tried to regard this as an exercise in brevity instead of just farting out a piece of lazy propaganda like our friend here. Again, this video is 2 minutes long, and look how much time I had to spend debunking it, if you can even call it that. Reminds me of a Jonathan Swift quotation that's often paraphrased and attributed to Mark Twain for some reason. A lot of quotes are incorrectly ascribed to Mark Twain, though. I think the original text is good enough on its own. Besides, as the vilest writer has his readers, so the greatest liar has his believers. And it often happens that if a lie be believed for only an hour, it has done its work, and there is no farther occasion for it. Falsehood flies, and the truth comes limping after it, so that when men come to be undeceived, it is too late. The jest is over, and the tale has had its effect. I am Hoss_Bossman on Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, and I of course have a Patreon at patreon.com/Hoss_Bossman. Also, check out my crowned jewel, a podcast called Breadsheet, available wherever fine pods are casted. I interview people way more interesting and cool and wrinkly brained than I on that podcast. But yeah, like, subscribe, share, comment, go subscribe to Breadsheet, rate and review it. Oh, and I also just started a Substack account because apparently that's yet another extra thing writers have to do these days to squeeze a few pennies out of this time-honored craft. That's Hoss.substack.com. Glad to have gotten that URL. Thank you kindly. And yeah, that money in politics video is coming. I just keep seeing bullshit I have to clean up before I can finish it. Sadly, there's no sign that that video will stop being relevant anytime soon. Thank you to Sansi, Cedric, and Amanda, my small but mighty and oh so very eternally appreciated crew of patrons. If you just want to throw a tip or donation, whatever you want to call it, my way, go to hossbossman.bandcamp.com and download Sounds of Breadsheet, the very first Breadsheet album. It's a compilation of the theme music that I make for the podcast, and I also have serious music that's not just goofy, silly stuff at thekmax.bandcamp.com. That's thekmacks.bandcamp.com. Okay, I'm out of here. Love you guys. Happy Martin Luther King Day in a couple of days, and have y'all selves a wonderful rest of the life. And may you forever worship yourself as a god. Mwah.